In this video, we're going to talk about the differences between the GP18 and the GP20, the first production turbocharged locomotive that EMD introduced. Also, they had the SD24 that came out just after the GP20. Okay. Interior differences, basically engine. With the GP20, brought the 567 D2. The D2 prime mover, rather. There were two versions of it. One for the GP20, rated at 2,000 horsepower, and later on one for the GP30, rated at 2,250. So sometimes the D2 model gets a little confusing, but that's what it is. Also, there's a D3 model that was in the SD24, 2,400 horsepower, and the D3A, which is in the GP35, which is the highest horsepower 567 prime mover at 2,500, but we'll talk about those in another video. So anyway, the GP20 was introduced in 1959, as was the 18. There were only about 260 of these models produced. It was not a real popular model, probably because of the shortness of the car body. When we zoom in here a little closer, you'll notice there's a lot of differences on the car body compared to the GP18. The fans have been modified. Another fan here has been added. This is because of the increased heat that needs to be dissipated with the extra horsepower of the prime mover. There's also several significant differences on the car body side, and we'll talk about those now. This is a Proto 2000 model. They did a little bit better job on this model than they did on the GP18 with these radiator intakes. They don't stick out. This is more correct, prototypical, and look at that fan. That's a good shot of it right there. There's several extra louvers added on here, as you'll notice. These here. This is a dynamic brake equipped model. I have another one that's a Conrail. It's a non-dynamic, and we'll look at that and compare that in a few minutes. Other differences: this side sill and air tanks have been moved. With the increased horsepower, these are a little more fuel thirsty, so a bigger fuel tank was added, and the side sill was cut and this air tank was put in instead of being on behind the fuel tank like it is here on the GP18. So those are a few differences there. Also, since this is now a turbocharged locomotive, other modifications had to be made. The exhaust, as you'll note, is a single, like all EMD turbocharged are. There's more louvers right in this area here, and this is a bulge that sticks out. That's, I'm assuming, something to do with the turbo in there. But notice the louvers are quite a bit different on this unit than they are on this unit. I like the looks of the GP20. I think it's a cool unit, the way the side sill was modified. And I like them. Rich doesn't, but I do. Alright, so let's do a rooftop shot so we can compare between the two. Low nose. The fans are much different. There's the turbo exhaust. dynamic brake, of course, which basically stayed the same, not a lot of change there. And the rear fans. And from a distance, so you can get another view. I call it the turbocharged GP9 because that's basically what it is. It's pretty neat. I like them. I wish they sold more of them and more were still around today, but I don't think there are many, if any, that still exist. Now we'll take a look at the differences in the dynamic brakes and non-dynamic. Okay, and here's my Conrail GP20 without dynamic brakes. Looks a little bit more plain. This again is a Proto 2000 model, and I'm a little disappointed with it because the color that Proto 2000 used on their original locomotives was putrid. It's like purple looking. It's horrible. It's not even close to Conrail color. But what are you going to do? Also, another note to mention on this. This model is not correct for Conrail. And I'll tell you why. This has a turbocharger on it. By the time Conrail got these from Penn Central had stripped the turbos out of them and installed a paper box like a GP38-2 up here. It was a little bit narrower, and they put 645 power assemblies in the engine because anything greater than a 567C or greater, you can actually put 645 power assemblies in them and increase the horsepower. So they got 2,000 horsepower again without a turbo. Turbos only last between 2 and 5 years from what I hear, and they're very expensive to replace. And if you are not really using it for high speed or whatnot, you really don't need it. So if you put a roots blower in, you got less maintenance and it works a whole lot better. So that's what Penn Central did. And some of these models that they had 4 exhaust stacks on here. I'm using my finger, it's blocking the view. They had 4 exhaust stacks. So at some point in time I want to modify this. I got to look at 2109 pictures and see if it had 2 exhaust stacks or 4 exhaust stacks, and cut the turbo out and put the paper box on it. But if I go through that much trouble, I should probably repaint it. In the light that I got right here now, it looks pretty good color-wise, but it really isn't. It's deceiving. So let's just do a quick rooftop shot, and that'll be the end of this series. Looks a lot more plain than the other one without the dynamic brakes. And there's the other one again. Alright, so that concludes this series. Hope you learned a lot and enjoyed the video. You can kind of see the lousy color now. And as I get more time, I want to do the GP30, which I have one in Conrail. And then we'll talk about that and the 35s. Also, one other side note before I cancel this. The SDs we'll also touch on. There were SD7s and SD9s and SD18s, but there were no SD20s. The SD got moved to the 24, and the reason they did that is because they had a longer car body. You could increase the horsepower and dissipate the heat properly. Also, there was never an SD30. There was only a GP30, but there was never a GP24 either, from the factory. Other railroads have created one after the fact by modifying stuff, but from EMD, there was never originally. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. Please comment, and if you have any questions, I'll try to get back to you. I've been kind of busy. I've had problems with the computer and the camera, so that's why I haven't been doing many videos lately. Just to let you know that, and I'm trying to get these issues resolved, so hopefully soon. Thanks for looking.